Welcome to the Everyone is a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net. We're also on everyoneIsACriticPodcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Critics Pod, Instagram, Critics Pod. That's our handle. If you go there, you can watch our trailers, participate in the top fives, read the news, read all of Sean's reviews that he's been doing a lot of the last 2 months or so. Or really longer than that, but you've really kicked into gear lately. It's award season.
Yeah, there's my list of the best movies of the year and worst movies of the year already up, and we'll save those obviously for the end of the year when you guys are ready for your lists.
But if you want to cheat and read his early, you can. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. If you go subscribe on iTunes, that helps us move up the charts and compete with the other movie review podcasts. We're a top 10 podcast. I haven't looked in a while, but I think we're like 4 or 5. But rating and reviewing the show, subscribing and downloading in iTunes helps out the most. We do have a new review from Davenport. They're in Canada. Good discussion, helpful opinions, but too many spoilers. The good. Number 1, the guys have good chemistry. Number 2, they don't always have to agree on every film. It's actually hard to find a good podcast where this is the case. 3, they don't just cater to critically acclaimed films. Again, hard to find a good podcast that isn't either just talking about the biggest blockbusters or shunning them for the critical darlings. It's well balanced, which is really all I can ask for. The not so good, I like to listen to the podcast on Monday. Generally, though, the earliest I see a film is on Tuesday after it comes out. I'm cheap. It's cheap night. It is often hard to get through some of the convos without the movie being spoiled, especially as of late. Wish the conversation could be more aware of spoilers. And we try.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. This is just a cool thing where when you download a podcast, you can listen to it any day of the week. It's weird. I would give it your best shot, eh? No, and we love you. I love Canada. It's where I plan on living someday, so don't hate us.
After last year, sooner than later.
Yeah.
No, we like to bust the balls of our reviewers.
Of course.
We try. Sometimes it's really impossible to talk about it without doing so like Mother.
Yeah. And in this one, don't listen if you haven't seen Star Wars.
If you haven't seen Star Wars, you're the only one, and don't listen till Wednesday. This is coming out on Tuesday, so yeah, you missed it. So we had some sickness in the podcast. The Star Wars came out, so we moved it back a day. So you're good. What else? Patreon. IHateCritics.net/Patreon is the best way to help out the podcast. Last week, Sean had mentioned something about Patreon starting to screw people over. I cut it out of the podcast. Only because at the time my microphone went out, and it was just a perfect place to cut. But Patreon isn't screwing people over. They changed their policy after you guys yelled at them, so that's the best way to help us support the podcast. And if you change your donations, we're not going to embarrass you and move a credit on you to make it look like, oh, so-and-so dropped down. Not that I'm encouraging you to do so, but we're not here to, make people look stupid or not. And to be honest, you probably wouldn't notice it right away anyway. But that's the best way to help the podcast out, and we really appreciate everybody who's helped us out there. And starting next year, you'll be getting bonus episodes. This week is Star Wars week, not John Cena week. As much as I wanted it to be. One of the top 5 the Marine movies or whatever they're called. Anyway, let's start with trailers before we get to Star Wars. Annihilation.
Alex Garland's latest. He's, of course, the director of Ex Machina. This stars Natalie Portman and at least has an appearance by Poe Dameron.
That is not
Oscar
cool
Isaac.
at all.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I trust Alex Garland to deliver based off of Ex Machina, so I expect big things. That says this trailer does give the impression of another one of those unknown entity movies that has a very kind of there's a lot of cliches that come with that kind of movie, where there's this thing that's implacable thing that's moving and taking things and annihilating whatever, and nobody knows how to stop it. Those can tend to have a lot of familiarity to them. But like I said, I trust this director.
Yeah, there's nothing about this trailer that I didn't like other than a small sense that the special effects aren't up to par. And that doesn't mean that the final product won't be, but it just looks a little strange. The shimmer, as they're calling it, if you see the trailer, you'll know what we're talking about. It just has the slightest tinge of not quite good enough, and I'm thinking it will be fine in the end. Ex Machina was a beautiful looking film. I can only imagine the final product here will be as well. I noticed something, and perhaps you guys did too, that Annihilation was discussed maybe in Europe going straight to Netflix as opposed to being theatrically released, and I would assume that that's going to stick in Europe, but I don't know if either of you saw the same story.
No, I hadn't heard.
Okay,
Neither have I.
Then that's a European story. Ignore me. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, it did have a release date in February, did it not?
Yeah.
For here, yes.
Yeah. So that's good. I mean, I'm kind of with both of you. I trust the cast and director. My only real complaint with Ex Machina was that it was such a simple story with a complex idea, but they made it so watchable and easy to consume, which part of me wanted to try a little harder. And because of that, I wonder if maybe some of the things Sean's worried about could seep through in here and possibly be something. But I trust everybody involved, and I'm looking forward to it. Clint Eastwood, the 1517 to Paris.
Yeah, I'm surprised. That he usually rushes them out in time for Christmas to try and sneak into the award season. This time he's actually going to take his time, I guess. This is based off of the true story, that terrorist attack on that train, and it actually stars the guys who were in that moment, which is pretty crazy. I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like this since maybe Ben Sliney in United 93, who the guy who was actually in charge of our airspace on September 11th, was actually playing himself in that movie. And here we have these three guys who stopped these terrorists playing themselves in this movie, which is highly unusual. And I can't wait to see what Clint Eastwood does with it.
Spoiler alert.
In case you didn't know what that
Real
big
life
story.
No, all joking aside, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a very tense film, and similar to the way that he made American Sniper, hands on the edge of the seat, wondering what's going to happen next, even though you can clearly find out what happens next. He has a good way of making true stories fleshed out, and so from that aspect, I'm looking forward to it. But there is that part of me that also says I am a little burnt out on the idea of what a director or Hollywood or whomever tells me what a patriot is. And I guess that's the only part of this that makes me hesitant to see it. I'm sure that it's going to be a riveting film. Please don't mistake me on that. But I'm tired of hearing about what a patriot is and that it can only be a soldier that has done something heroic. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that as well. I didn't feel that in American Sniper like a lot of people did. Mm-hmm. But I kind of felt that in the trailer a tad. But I also just kind of, like Jenna Fisher's in it. I'm like, oh, there's Tanner from The Office. And I'm just thinking, Clint Eastwood has no idea who she is. She just picked her up and put her in the movie. And just kind of how weird. I just started going behind the scenes and wondering how that dynamic was. And then, Jay Moore and that other movie he made and all these other people that he just had in Clint Eastwood movies. And Clint Eastwood has no idea who they are. That's all I could think about during the trailer. And then just for fun every day.
Just for fun.
This is a story about, apparently it's like a teen romance about somebody who keeps leaping from body to body every day, quantum leap style, I guess. Every day they wake up with somebody different, but they fall in love with a girl, and they want this girl to be in love with them and try and figure out a way to stay with them while they're switching bodies between God knows how many people. Intriguing premise. I have a bad feeling that they're going to screw it up just by putting in a lot of that stupid teen romance tropes. Like the Chloe Grace Moretz movie the last year where she died, and then there's all those tinkling strings, and I think I just have a bad feeling there's going to be a lot of that stuff.
Well, on top of that, you have I don't know how great of actors these kids are, all playing the same person. That's going to be a challenge for that director, and probably a lack of a budget to really make this work. I don't really. I like the premise, but I don't know where you go with this premise to make it good.
It looks like everything that's like it, and it will have to prove a lot to me to make it more interesting, including the film this past year where there's a teenager that is allergic to everything or has a serious immune disorder and wants to explore the world, or The Space Between Us that came out earlier this year, and you have a teen that's from Mars and needs to explore the world. Oh, okay, I guess the demographic is being met here. That particular budget has been fulfilled.
Ferdinand.
Start with the big movie. Are you serious?
Well, only because the rest kind of flows together.
All right, fine. Ferdinand is the story. It's actually based off of a Disney short from 1937 called Ferdinand, which is just a 7-minute cartoon that many people probably saw on Saturday afternoons on the old, or maybe during the old Wonderful World of Disney when they used to show shorts. This one stars John Cena. It's a pretty similar story to the 1937 version, just fleshed out with a lot more of a modern flair, I guess. This, of course, comes from the people at Blue Sky Animation. They're not the best house working when it comes to animation. They're behind the Ice Age movies, I think, is what's biggest for them. And, man, the Ice Age movies just suck. They just really, really suck. Ferdinand isn't much better. The thing that I kept hitting him on review is that this movie is gutless. And it is. It's really a gutless movie because I realize we're talking about a kid's movie, but it's also a movie about a bull that doesn't want to fight and realizes how dangerous bullfighting is for bulls, but it doesn't have the nerve to actually condemn bullfighting. Like, there's nobody, even the bulls are not, even the movie bends over backwards so hard to be fair to people who love bullfighting because they want that international market money. They don't want to cut Brazil or Spain out of the potential box office, so they back away from really putting a condemnation on the thing that is trying to kill our main character. It's not going to condemn the thing that is trying to kill our main character, which is just gutless. Again, I know it's a kid's movie, but I don't care. It's gutless to approach this movie in that way. Just don't make it. If you don't have the nerve to actually make the movie, then don't make the freaking movie. Bullfighting is disgusting. It's horrible. Everything about it is bad. I don't care about the pageantry. I don't care about your history. It's bad. It's wrong to simply murder animals for sport. And I can't get past that with this stupid little movie.
Fair enough. To be noted, I would murder a deer without a second thought. But I would kill it with my hands if I could. But in this case, it is slightly daring. They cast a young actor named Jack Gore to play the voice of a young Valiente. I thought that's Jack Gore, because it's bull. I have nothing else to say about this movie. I was trying to add a fun angle. That's all. Bob?
I thought about seeing it just because, but I didn't get around to it. It didn't do probably very well, but that international market must really make up for it because at a $100 million budget.
Why did they put that out this week? It makes no sense. I know last week would have been closer to Coco, and they don't want to get too close to Coco, but at the same time, they knew it was going to get crushed this week. They had to have known it would get crushed this week. They could have put it out against Just Getting Started and been number one at the box office for a week, pushed it up to maybe 30 million instead of 15, and actually made a couple bucks. Instead, they put it out against Star Wars, and it got crushed. This is the dumbest release schedule I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
This is really an idiotic way to put out a movie.
I get the, alternative type of movie, a different movie but people are taking their kids to learn Star Wars instead of this.
Counter-programming only works if you're the alternate audience, but then you share the audience.
You almost, maybe a romantic comedy would be a good thing to put out this week.
Which is usually what they do. I mean, in the past, is it the Tina Fey, Amy Poehler comedy
Sisters came out. Force Awakens did.
In the past, that's what they did, is put out romantic comedies opposite this. And an animated kids movie up against Star Wars is going to get killed, and you know it.
Now, next time, it might do okay. I will say it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, Ferdinand. But
is it 62%?
It was like 70-something. But Judd Apatow made a good point. If you just kind of like a movie, it's considered fresh. So even though like that movie that's the best reviewed movie of all time, Lady Bird, some people are still kind of in the middle of that movie, but just because of that, they went fresh and therefore hit 100%.
Well, no, hang on though. But the critics themselves choose. The critics themselves are the ones who choose whether it's an up or down vote.
Correct.
That's how this one guy is getting himself all sorts of press right now. And I'm not going to say his name because that's why he did this. He gave the movie a B-, which is a more than passing grade. Then he gave it a Rotten Tomato just to be that one guy who
is that how the
ruined
story
the score.
came out?
Yeah.
But still, I mean, a B- is a fresh in real life, so that's just stupid. But
He liked the movie, but he gave it a negative, a bad tomato because he wanted to be that one guy that everybody talked about.
But I guess my point is that you don't have to love the movie for it. You just have to like it okay for it to be fresh. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of once again, another thing that says Rotten Tomatoes is a piece of crap. Which brings me to the next movie. I went, because I always put the Rotten Tomatoes score in our show notes, and I thought Sean was really just being a dick reading all his posts on Star Wars. Hear me out. I didn't realize that the fans were like split on this movie big time. So I'm putting the critical Rotten Tomatoes score in, and all of a sudden I look over to the right and I see 50%. I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, hang on. That's not real fans.
What
What happened was a group of these man boys who were kind of pissed off because there's a girl in the lead decided to downvote the movie without even trying. They were downvoting the movie specifically.
That may be, but I've been hearing a lot of fans too.
This is about SJWs and right wing assholes. That's what those score is about. The actual cinema score is A-. That's from people who actually saw the movie and were interviewed coming out of the theater. They gave it an A-. It's 50% of Rotten Tomatoes because they were just downvoting it.
Regardless, I've heard my fair share of actual Star Wars fans bad-mouthing not just the girl in it, but just decisions. But let's get to the movie first before we have this conversation anyway.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi picks up the story with three different threads going on. The first one has Rey finding Luke Skywalker on the island and trying to get him to come back with her, or at least train her to be a Jedi. You have a secondary story that finds Finn and a new character. What's her name?
Rose Tico.
They they're on a transport with the rest of the cast that are trying to escape the First Order, and they escape to another planet to try and find a hacker to bring them back and get them aboard the First Order ship so they can shut it down. And then, of course, there is the story that's taking place in this transport where Poe Dameron is trying to make time so Finn and Rose have a chance to complete their mission, while also dealing with this new leader, Holdo, played by Laura Dern. She's an interesting character, lots of complexity. I really loved her performance, and I really like this movie a lot. I thought it was a pretty terrific Star Wars movie. Overall, I feel like I'm kind of aging out of Star Wars a little bit. It's not my nostalgia anymore. I can sense where this is becoming this generation Star Wars as opposed to my generation Star Wars, and so I do have a bit of more distance from it, and I'm looking at it from a much more objective perspective. I think rather than the nostalgia glasses are off now, and I'm actually seeing it as a movie. And as a movie, I thought it was pretty terrific. I think Rian Johnson is a masterful director. I think he hits the biggest points really, really well. The fight scenes are incredible. The what he does with Luke Skywalker is remarkable. I really think, honestly, Mark Hamill deserves an Academy Award nomination. He's that good in this movie. Do I have any problems with it? I mean, some of the stuff with Finn and Rose in that gambling area, that was kind of silly and kind of a little bit much. And I didn't like the way that Poe Dameron was, again, just like he was in The Force Awakens, he gets sidelined again. Here's a very good actor who can do a lot of really great things, and he's like the third plot, basically, is with him. And it's good enough. He props it up really well, but I want to see more of that guy. He seems pretty cool to me. And he's Oscar Isaac. He's a great actor. I want to see him do more. So those are my minor criticisms that kind of hold me back. It also does run for a little bit too long. 2.5 hours is a bit much for this, but overall, I like this movie.
Yeah, this is a magnificent movie to me. I say this as somebody that should be amongst the group of fans that, yes, they're I am not disputing your facts because I actually didn't see that story at all about people voting the film down. But I belong to a number of Star Wars message boards and Facebook groups, and all of them are intricately linked with the collecting world and the nostalgia of Star Wars. And the overwhelming opinion is that they hate it, hate this movie. And in fact, the guy that I would consider that I'm closest to that is a big fan and a costumer, I spoke with him for 10 minutes before the film started. After the film, he posts, I'm going to go ahead and say it, this film is awful. And I'm saying, wait, how in the world do you even get to awful, let alone don't like? And I think I've caught on to something, at least in my head here. You are saying that it's not your Star Wars, and that the nostalgia is lost on you a bit. And I don't think you're as serious about it because you have actual perspective. A lot of the fans of Star Wars, I would say my age or older, they don't understand that a story can evolve. It's not their Star Wars hashtag. It's hashtag Superman Leia. And if you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. And they're getting very angry about the fact that it's not the Star Wars that they wanted. The problem is this is a good movie. They've made creative decisions here that matter. Luke Skywalker is written in such a way that maybe Mark Hamill didn't expect, but he sure as hell acts the hell out of it, and the director guides him to be an actor for it. Like, Mark Hamill's never been known as a fantastic actor. His voice work is magnificent, okay? I'll never doubt that, but him as Luke Skywalker from time to time doesn't always sell his scenes in that original trilogy, and I love those movies, okay? I was able to shelve my nostalgia for this film. Afterwards, I was very satisfied. Usually when it comes to a Star Wars movie, I'm thinking to myself, boy, I can't wait till the next one so I can find out what in the world's going on. This one, I walk out very satisfied, not interested per se. Of course, I'm there just like I was with this one in the first crowd for episode 9, okay? This one I'm walking out saying, wow, I'm satisfied. I'm sated, as if I don't need more, but I'll definitely take more because the film is satisfying. The fight scenes are magnificent. There are 3 or 4 particular fight scenes that I said, wow, they did that really well. My fanboy interests were also sated because they brought some powers and force uses and Star Wars little intricacies into this story that true fans or diehard fans that are saying this is awful should really love that they brought some of that stuff into the canon. Stuff that has been in books and in comics and whatnot. It's in this movie again. That's amazing, okay? And there are character arcs for all of these main characters. I'm going to disagree with you slightly about the Poe Dameron character. Yes, he's the third most important storyline, but that also makes sense. The Jedi are the most important here, okay? And then the stuff with different landscapes going to Canto Bight and recruiting Benicio del Toro and whatnot to get onto the ship. Okay, yes, that's the second story because it's driving the plot. That tertiary story, you see Poe Dameron go from hothead to taking something over, okay? I'm not trying to spoil the film at all here by saying it, but he definitely has a character arc, and therefore the film, I think, does use him. In fact, they use him to the point where he makes a complete transition, and they're setting him up to be more important than what he originally was. And that's just where I'm going to disagree with you. You might have seen something different in there. And yes, you're not using Oscar Isaac enough. It'd be great if he was like a Jedi. I mean, in fact, when they first cast Oscar Isaac, I thought, ooh, he'd be a great like right-hand man to Luke Skywalker. And then he ended up being a pilot, and they were originally going to kill him off.
Yeah, I think he's for me, he's more Han Solo than anybody else. I think that's what I'm reacting to, is wanting him to be more of a Han Solo character.
For sure. I must say that this has to be my final statement for right now until we discuss it further, because there's more room to discuss it. But this is Star Wars maturing, evolving, and not just giving fan service. If there's fan service in this movie, it's to service the story as opposed to the other way around. And thus, I couldn't be prouder of a Star Wars movie in 2017 being the way that it is. I'm trying to divorce myself from some of my brethren a little bit because they're being awful about this with the hashtags and the petition to Disney to remove The Last Jedi from the canon. What a bunch of assholes. I mean, I was proud to be a part of this group, and I still am, but for crying out loud, get over yourself. The movie says as much as well within it.
So Bob's been right this whole time then.
No. clearly he's had an eye on some people that wouldn't be satisfied with anything that they've ever been given in terms of story. But this does not belong to our generation, as King Arthur never belonged to a certain generation of Englanders or Brits. It was a story that lasted over time, and if it deserves to last over time, then it needs to enrich itself and evolve over time as it's told through the visual medium. Screw anyone that wants Star Wars to stay the way that they think it should be. It needs to evolve, and this is the film for it. I'm very proud of it.
I should point out that Bob is always one of the many things that you've picked up and criticized is that you hate this fan base.
There's a good reason for it this week.
Hate's a strong word, but they definitely annoyed the hell out of me during The Force Awakens. And I know everybody's been waiting for my opinion. That's all you came to this podcast for. The funny thing before I get to my opinion is I was talking to Josh for like half an hour before this. Josh is really sick right now. He's having a hard time getting words out. But what you just heard was him just pushing the sickness aside for Star Wars. It was pretty incredible. I liked it. You know how you can sometimes watch a movie and the movie pulls you in and you're just kind of invested in the movie, and you might even miss things because you're invested in it, and something that should take you out of the movie doesn't, or whatever. Then other times you watch the movie from the outside and you're just watching everything wrong with it. This one just kind of all of a sudden I got like quarter of the way in it, and I'm just like, oh, I'm kind of in this movie. I'm not I'm not distracted by Star Wars bullshit. And that alone to me is an accomplishment. And I was kind of like, good for this guy. You know, it wasn't, there was no fan service at all. This was no pandering. There's no pandering in this movie whatsoever. The stuff people are complaining about, like the Superman Leia and the thing at the end, I was complaining about in Rogue One about Darth Vader not having enough power. With as much as you build this guy up, he can't grab a stupid blueprint or whatever the hell he was.
The disc, yeah.
So, I was bothered the other direction, in this universe. And that's my favorite Star Wars movie up until this one. This one probably would be number one now that I've seen it. I'm not going to pretend like I love the movie. It's not going to make my top 10 of the year, but I was definitely shocked at how much I enjoyed it. It figures that finally as a Star Wars movie I kind of like, and the fans hate it.
Of course.
But and this is kind of a spoilery thing. So again, if you haven't seen Star Wars 1, why? I mean, $220 million. What the hell's wrong with you? Other than the fact that you've never seen any of the Star Wars, in which case, good for you. Don't ever see them.
It is a rabbit hole that you must commit yourself to go down.
Right. And or don't do a movie podcast if you don't want to see them either. But the Luke Skywalker thing, it's in the universe and outside the universe, he's such a built-up character that's kind of larger than life with, where do you go from here? How do you top this? I mean, he's a household name. And in this movie, he kind of deals with that. And I was kind of happy that they actually did that in this movie. And I thought that was cool. I was telling Josh earlier, it was like Guns N' Roses. They had that big album in the 80s, Appetite, and then they broke up. And then they did other things. But then they broke up, and everybody's like, when are they going to reunite? When are they going to reunite? And when they do, it's never going to be as good. And even if they make an album, it's not going to touch that. And instead, here they decided to have him deal with that within the world. And I just found that neat. And I don't know that I'd give him an Oscar for it, because there's a lot of decent performances this year, but that's not to say it's not good. I don't know. I was just kind of impressed with the movie, how they did that stuff. And no, there was not maybe one point where I kind of briefly came out of it, and that was the Finn and the Rose or whatever, when he kind of jumps in at the end and does something. I was just like, why don't you just go inside and one of you die? I mean... Because it kind of looked like one of you did, but then maybe you didn't. I don't know. But other than that, that was kind of and that's because they didn't show her dead. Didn't even ruin it for me. But that was kind of the closest thing that me coming out of it was that. But otherwise, I was pleasantly surprised, and my daughter fell asleep fair portion into it. Her friend, though, watched it, was on the edge of her seat the entire time, and then as we're leaving the theater, I had to use the restroom, and they were waiting out in the lobby, and then as we're walking to the car, she's like, everybody in there was like a skinny white guy with glasses and zits. No, I'm sorry, nerdy. A nerdy white guy with glasses and zits. I was like, yep, that's about right.
Guilty.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't get the complaints, and it's just silly to hold on to something like that and hate it as much as people are hating it. I don't think I hate any movie as much as people hated this movie. It's just weird.
It's hard to say that everyone hated it. What I can say is that there's a very clear divide, and I don't think that you're a little more middle ground than you're the rarity in that you understand that you like the film, but as a Star Wars film, you've kind of moved past it. You're a middle ground for what I have seen and participated in online. Extreme love or extreme hatred, and the fact that there's a petition, people talking about like this isn't Lucas's Star Wars. You idiots! Just to keep the same people that
hated his prequels.
Yes, yes, and then the Disney Fox merger this past week talk about re-releasing the original versions, and Lucas saying nope, still not doing it. It's not going to happen. I mean, you can't satisfy certain people. It's very unfortunate, but this is a challenging film in that it dares to challenge all of the mythos that we know, all of the ideas that we might have about something that already exists. And creatively, that means that it's not just there to eat your money. It's there to try and evolve and mature. And that is such a cool thing.
You say it's not there to eat your money, but my movie pass didn't work. I got the stupid.
Okay, I know
Star
how much
Wars,
that was. So.
And I didn't. They just said, okay. I didn't see a price tag on it until all of a sudden I got the bill, and I'm like,
I got 2 of those and the popcorn for the price of the one. And so it has
the helmet,
to be.
is that the helmet thing?
It's a bucket.
I saw a helmet. Like
It raved there were
helmet.
helmets.
Yeah.
Regal, there was the BB-8 topper. This segues well for the last thing that I can say about it, I promise, because I could go on for hours. But the package where you can get the collector's cup and the collector's tin or whatnot, the people in front of me were the worst kind of fans. They had friends coming in that weren't even in line. We're talking about long lines here, getting refills on their stuff. And the people in front of me were saying, here, give me your stuff. I'll get it refilled. And the poor girl behind the counter was like, oh, really? I mean, really, you're cutting in line to get a refill when you can't just wait your turn? And these are 40 to 45-year-old men doing this right in front of me. And I'm like, I'm one of you. I can look at what you're doing. She gets to me, and I'm like, hi, how are you? And I'm nice to her, whereas everyone else is just going off like crazy, doing whatever the heck they want. She gives me 2 cups. 2 of those, and I paid for 1, and I gave one of them to my son. So I know that she was like, hey, finally somebody's cool. And I feel like I'm representative of the ones that get this experience, and then the ones in front of me are the idiots that don't.
And she no longer has a job.
It was worth it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I like the fact that it didn't feel like a money grab. And, Sean said it was long. I'll be honest, I didn't realize that I was in the theater for 3 hours until I got back to the car, and I was like, holy shit, it's 12:30. So, again, it was one of those where I just ended up getting in further than I thought I would, and just kind of everything seemed to pass me by. Nothing bothered me about it. I'm not in love with it. It's not going to make my top 10 or anything, but I was just kind of shocked. Oh. Wow, this is going to be the shortest podcast on Star Wars ever. We have kind of...
Because we could spoil the heck out of it and talk about some things, but I don't think either of you are as interested in the spoilerific moments as I am, so there's no reason to add something on unless you really want to.
This is the rare one. I don't think there's really all that much to it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's not really much to debate or speculate about, unless you're like a hardcore nerd who says, no, the Force isn't capable of doing that. Well, since when?
Always been capable of doing that.
How do you know what the Force is capable of?
Well, actually, in comics,
If you could rename the movie, what would you call it?
I wouldn't. I think it's actually perfect. It serves the same purpose as the movie does, to turn things on its head a little bit.
Sean, would you rename it?
I don't get. I mean, not really. I really don't have an alternate funny title. Sorry,
I clearly do. So
I hadn't thought that far.
Go on.
Star Wars got milk.
Ah.
That was amazing. That didn't take me out of the movie. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I don't know. It just
I tweeted something at you, Josh. Did you get it?
I may have.
About there was there's an Easter egg here in this movie from Rogue One.
From Rogue One. Yes, it has to do with the hyperspace travel. And that in Rogue One, when they're in the file room attempting to steal the plans of the Death Star, there is a file discussing hyperspace tracking. And that clearly shows up in this film. It's an idea that it's like, oh, wait, they can't do that? Oh, all right, fine. Whatever you need. It's I wasn't paying attention, but yeah, that is a nice little thing to have happen.
Here's one more thing I wanted to bring up that I just thought of. At no point did I feel like every character was safe. You know, I felt every character could at some point go down. I mean, aside from maybe Kylo Ren and what's her name, Rey.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I thought everybody was up for death. You know, and you don't always like the Marvel movies lately, and even the last Justice League movie. You just know everybody's safe, and there's just no. You never really worried about anybody. In this movie, I definitely had it's just that sense of you never know what's going to happen next because a lot of stuff kept changing, and it was like you brought up Laura Dern, and I was talking about to Josh about this earlier. That whole twist was awesome.
Oh yeah,
that was
Very
one of
clever.
the best parts of the movie because she's essentially a bad guy at one point, and I don't know, not to spoil it, but it was.
And is not the character that I had theorized for over a year that she might be. So not a single theory that I had actually presented itself. And then the film actually this is not a spoiler, force connecting between Kylo Ren and Rey. The way that the film explains how that takes place, I leaned over to my son and said, ooh, it's like my theory. And then the film blows it out of the water. It's so funny. It fooled me. I feel pretty duped wonderfully.
And I wonder if that's part of what people are bothered by it, that they couldn't figure it out. And I don't know.
That's so cool to be surprised by something you're intimately familiar with like that.
For your
That's
entire
awesome.
life.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this fit what I thought it was going to be?
I know. My toys didn't play like that.
You can't fly with the Force in space.
Except you can. What a lovely
She would only
movie.
have 0.27 seconds.
Actually, she wasn't even wearing a spacesuit.
You guys aren't watching Guardians of the Galaxy. It's Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't care about that, and I'm the kind of dick that would. So, I mean, I don't know.
There's space battles in this movie where you can hear explosions, so stop worrying about that.
Anything else on Star Wars before we move on? All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
I'm going to put a pin in that real quick.
Put your top five. Who's your top five?
It makes more sense to do this here than afterwards. Top 5 Star Wars movies.
I have one from Instagram if you'd like me to take care of that off the bat.
Go ahead. I have it up here, but if you got it, go for it.
Yeah, Good Steve has number 5, Force Awakens, 4, Return of the Jedi, 3, A New Hope, 2, The Last Jedi, number 1, The Empire Strikes Back, and no prequels, but Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan is in the top 3 actors, characters of all 9 movies.
Jason from New Mexico said he was going to do exactly what I did, but he needs to try trolling harder. Instead, he did number 5, number 6, number 4, number 3, number 3, number 7, number 2, number 2, number 1, number 8. Honorable mentions to numbers 1, 4, and 5. and at the time he hadn't seen 9 yet.
Because they're fine. Never mind. Don't worry, Jason. Mission accomplished. I was bothered by it.
What was the thing about like Rogue One?
There is
being
no
part of
number
it?
9. There is no number 9.
Oh, because of Rogue One not being part of it or something.
It's not an episode. It's
So
a Star
that's-
Wars story.
So it should have been like 3.5.
But
I got it. Fellow podcaster Joel Sharpton, who might actually listen to an episode this week, and he might even be happy that I like the Star Wars movie. He had number 5, A New Hope, 4, The Force Awakens, 3, The Last Jedi, 2, Rogue One, number 1, Empire Strikes Back. I had a bunch of jokes, which you can go to Facebook and read, or I'll do my new list. I'm going to throw Return of the Jedi off. Number 4, hold on, I didn't write The Force Awakens. That's stupid. Whenever I tag a movie, it always changes on me.
I know what you mean.
So I don't even know what I had. Let's just say Return of the Jedi, Episode 4, Empire Strikes Back, Road One, and then probably my favorite one's probably this one, The Last Jedi. Who wants to go? Got one, Sean?
Sure. I got Last Jedi number 5, Rogue One 4, Force Awakens 3, A New Hope at number 2, and Empire Strikes Back is number 1.
Josh?
And these are my film babies. So in order, great consideration was taken, including Ewok TV films, and not the holiday special. But 5, Revenge of the Sith. I'll not say their full names like I'm used to doing for the purposes of brevity. 4, The Last Jedi. 3, Empire Strikes Back. 2, A New Hope, and 1, Return of the Jedi. It's always special to me to have it in that order. So I'm not going to change it just for the heck of it.
It takes a lot to crack through those ones that are just, your top 10 list of all time. Sometimes those are just hard to get into.
I thought about it, but man, I mean, nostalgia plays a part. Absolutely.
All right, let's go backwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed
Classic.
Brick, not the song, the movie.
Yes, this is a choice because it was directed by Rian Johnson. It's a first feature film, and it stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a high school Humphrey Bogart, if you will. It's a noir mystery set in high school with a kind of a modern drug angle. Lots of really intriguing stuff in this film. I really enjoyed Joseph Gordon-Levitt's performance. The first time I saw it again this week, it just felt just as good. I kept waiting for it to slip up and turn into like a high school movie, but he really sticks hard to this like this 1930s gangster talk that JGL does, and then the way he talks to women, the way it's all very Bogart in a gangster movie in the 30s and 40s. I really loved that, and I loved the way that they play out this story. Who is the guy with the club foot? Is that Lucas Haas?
The pin?
Yeah.
Yes, that's Lucas Haas.
Lucas Haas, terrific character that he runs like this drug empire out of his parents' basement, and his mom makes all his drug dealer friends food. I thought that was just a perfect touch for this movie. Everything about this movie is just so clever. It's centered on the first thing you see is a dead body, and then you back up to how we get to the dead body, and that's a great story. And the structure is strong. The characters are great. You can see a director making his first movie who is in such control of his tone and his characters. You don't see that very often in first-time filmmakers. And when you do, you've got to mark it and you've got to remember it, because that means you're looking at a director who's going to be very, very good. And Rian Johnson continues to prove that he is very, very good as a director.
Josh?
I'm glad that you said all of the things that a professional critic would say first, so that I don't have to worry about any of that, and I can just go straight to feeling like I usually do. And boy, for a movie that had such anticipation to it, and that I've been asked to watch it now for 6 years, roughly, and finally got a hold of that very copy. Well, when I woke up about halfway through the movie and then had to go back and then started watching it again, it wasn't the confusion so much as that I hated it. It's Juno as a crime film, okay? And that movie has a tone, a way of speaking, lines of dialogue that are very within that universe, and it's fine. And Sean, you were stating it's Bogart. JGL is playing Bogart in a high school. It's not it's not the high school setting that's a problem. The whole idea of this film was it's a cool idea to do, but then I didn't know what I was getting into. For whatever reason, I had it in my head that it was going to be like a dark high school drama or something like that. And it is a drama, but it's of a specific nature. And I couldn't get on board with it. It's definitely the way that they're talking. I didn't care about any of these characters. It has nothing to do with their performances either. They're all executing what the director's asking them to lay down. It's just a matter of, do I care about it? And no, I don't. I have the same feeling coming out of this that I do coming out of Juno. I can't tell you that it's a good film or a classic or anything like that. I can tell you that they executed what they wanted to do just fine, but I certainly wasn't interested at all. I mean, I'm glad I never have to watch this again. Bob.
I mean, it's really clever, and then it's too clever for its own good, depending on how you watching it, I guess. In a way, I think it's funny, just because they're walking through school in a film noir. So I can find the humor in that, even though there's no humor in it.
I do think that humor that you're picking up on, though, is intentional.
Oh, I agree.
think it's part of the movie.
I agree. But at the same time, I could see that being boring, depending on, how invested or interested you are in what's going on. So I get both sides of it. I like Rian Johnson. I like everything what I've seen of him. I love Looper. Last Jedi. He made a Star Wars movie I liked, And I guess I would just say this is neat for me. But I'm not. I don't plan on watching it a lot. I think really you could have just said the idea, and I'd have been as happy as I am with the final product as well, if that makes sense. Because it doesn't really go too much further than the idea. It's just you're watching. It's like, he's really doing this, and that's kind of where the humor is for me. Is I don't know. I get it. I like it, but I don't know that I'll watch it a lot unless we have to do it as a classic again because we lost this episode or something.
What are you trying to tell us, Bob?
I'm seeing where in The Last Jedi the scenes of humor in the particular off nature of it fits with this one and Looper for that matter, even though Looper is definitely more of like a standard film. I can see where his evolution as a director has come from, and The Brothers Bloom for that matter. I'm not crazy about that movie, but there's a specific tone to that one as well. I like him as a director. Visually, it's very interesting, and the idea is interesting, but boy, I just can't get behind this one. I feel really bad because I'm sitting here spewing filth for no reason because it's not like it's bad. It's just a preference thing.
Well, yeah, it's just one of those things where you don't like what it is,
Yeah.
kind of and we've all been there.
Yeah.
Let's see, what's next?
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know, my mom's a plumber.
That explains a lot about you, Ray.
Every movie in 1987 came out this week.
Isn't that the truth? I'd like to get the ones that we probably don't know a lot about out of the way first. And that would be a movie called The Dead. It stars Angelica Houston and directed by her father, John Huston. Didn't even make $1 million. Did either of you watch it or have you seen it before?
Nope.
Okay.
I know it was an Academy Award nominee.
Really? For best
I believe
actress?
Best Actress, yeah.
For name
Okay.
recognition.
I can't say that for sure but it is interesting in that John Huston's directing his daughter. So
Right.
there's that. Then there's Leonard Part 6, which I have seen, but it has been light years, and we're talking about a Bill Cosby comedy film that is not at all funny. If you want Bill Cosby for humor, then definitely watch Bill Cosby himself, or listen to some of his
Or
earlier
just
material,
don't watch anything Bill Cosby at
or
all.
don't support him at all because of the things that he's done. Whatever you want to do, Leonard Part 6 is terrible. I don't know if either of you have seen it.
I've seen it. It's as bad as his rape charges. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The jokes is funny too.
Jesus Christ. And then there's a movie called September that isn't coming up really easily. Okay, there we go. Yeah, Denholm Elliott, Elaine Stritch, Mia Farrow, again under $1 million. Why did I even click on that? Then let's go to the good stuff, shall we? Well, kind of good stuff. Battery's not included. This is a film starring Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin. I was very interested as an 8-year-old wanting to see this pretty badly because, look at the little robots that fly around. And then also Steven Spielberg is an executive producer, and therefore you're starting to think all of the E.T. things. But this film isn't that. The technology in it is interesting because the robots are kind of cool. The little ships that it's like a miniature city that flies throughout the air and ignites the lives of all of these tenants. But really, it's very depressing. When you think about it, Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin have lost a son, and so they keep imagining that this character, or Jessica Tandy keeps thinking this character is her son, and I'm like, dementia's hilarious. I mean, it's not. That's the thing, and so it becomes something that's a little more depressing than lighthearted and fun, which you would expect out of this. I know that both of you know the film that I'm talking about, so thoughts, memories?
Cute, I guess.
I hate it. I could not stand watch that. This is a movie that got played a lot in my house, and I never liked it once. And it was just like, I'm playing this movie. It's boring. I don't want to watch it anymore.
Frank McRae is in it. He of Used Cars, and
maybe I should go back now that I know that he's in it.
He plays a former boxer, and there's a couple punches that he lands that are crowd pleasing. But other than that, I suppose you really need to love Steven Spielberg produced films to like this, or Jessica Tandy. Also, a crowd favorite, a fan favorite, something that I find that we can at least explore on this one is Overboard, directed by Frank Marshall, starring Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. If you haven't seen Overboard, then you've never had basic cable, because it's been on TBS and TNT ad nauseum since 1988. I love Overboard. No matter how many times I see it, I can always glean something from it. At first, it was like, this is funny. The things that they do to her when she's in the house, the kids terrorizing the mother. When I was a kid, that was kind of funny. Well, as an adult, I see it more as like it's definitely creepy. Okay, you can't steal people and make them think that they're somebody else. That's bad. So let's get that out of the way too. But there's a sweetness to it that I kind of dig, and there's a humor that I really dig, especially once you get towards the end and the Coast Guard's involved, and man overboard is kissing woman overboard. It's a hell of a day at sea, sir. That's hilarious no matter how many times I see it. And I love the Randy Newman song at the end. When I was a kid and I was tired of watching Overboard, but my mom was watching it for the umpteenth time, I would still go into the living room to listen to the Randy Newman song at the end.
Yeah, even the creepiness, even that age, I knew Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn were together, so that creepiness just never seeps into this movie. You know, you're able to. They do a good job of making you block it out, and I don't know. I just always had a soft spot for this movie, and I don't know. It's probably the first butt I've ever seen.
Yeah,
a very nice one at that.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't get it. I don't get what people see in this movie. I don't. It's just, to me, it's just not funny. I find it shrill and off-putting.
I think it seriously would be, if you pulled 10 people off the street, what are the 80s movies you remember? I bet you Overboard would come up on like 7 out of 10 of people's
Depends on how many
lists.
movies you asked for, but if I had to name 100 for sure.
Yeah.
If I had to name 50 probably at some point. I mean, there's 4 Rocky movies, I think, that came out in the 80s. And then 3 Rambos.
That's a good point. But I do think that culturally it has stood the test of time. It's been one of those rare movies that is definitely set in the 80s and it is of its time, but people still love today on the whole.
I think it's just Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. You know, it's like you watch a bad TV show, like say the show Weeds. I loved the first 3 seasons of it, and then it started to suck. but I liked the characters and the actors so much that I just kept watching because it was fun. It's kind of that. I liked Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn so much that it didn't really matter if it was good or not.
Of course. One that I didn't get a chance to see, that I didn't watch any of them this week for crying out loud, so busy and not feeling well, is Ironweed, and stars Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep. I really wish I had gotten a chance to watch this because those are two actors at the peak of their talents. So I know that at least one of you saw this.
Yeah, this is directed by Hector Babenco from a best-selling novel from 1983 by Joseph Campbell. Nicholson and Streep star as homeless people, bums. And the reasons that they got there are kind of interesting. But we watched as they kind of just go through a period of their life where they're trying just trying to find a bed for a night and another $1 for a drink. And in that way, it's kind of like Barfly, but it's a little bit more drawn out, a much more serious film than
a little
Barfly.
more Jack Nicholson, a little less Mickey Rourke.
Same kind of, but there's a similar intensity too in their performances. It's very stage bound. Is what I took away from it. Is there's a lot of moments that are just. It feels like this is a stage play more than it is a movie. And I think that comes from Hector Babenco's background on Broadway. That kind of makes this film a little bit for me like Fences, where it's just. Like I can recognize what's good about it, but there's a lot of belted to the back of the room kind of performances going on, where everybody's trying to reach that back wall with everything that they do. That said, I mean it's still a very good movie. It's still a well-made movie, and I do recommend people search for it, especially if you love Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson. These are two pretty great performances
from two of the probably the most overrated actors of all time.
Oh, no. Hook, line, sinker.
I don't believe that at all. I kind of like pestering our listeners, and I know Uncle Jeff's a big Meryl Streep
fan. Next is Norman Jewison's film Moonstruck, starring Cher and Nicolas Cage, and Academy Award winner for Best Supporting Actress Olympia Dukakis. And I didn't get to this one either, and this was my number one want to see for this week because of its. There's a particular scene in which she smacks Nicolas Cage and says, "Snap out of it," that my mom would occasionally do in jest, like not actually smack me, but do that because she loved this movie so much. But gosh, I still haven't seen Moonstruck.
Wow, you're gonna wish you had, because this is a near perfect movie. This is I mean, it could be a sitcom if it wanted to be, but it rises just above that because Norman Jewison is a pretty good director, and this is him at the height of his powers right here. This is the best. I think this arguably could be the best movie he's made. That's saying a lot. He directed Dead Justice for All and a couple other pretty well-known movies from back in the 70s during that auteur era. But this movie is just nearly perfect. Every beat of this film is smart. This is an incredible screenplay. It's a wildly romantic movie. It has several different performances that are quite good. Each of the cast members were, except for Nicolas Cage, I believe, nominated for at least 4 of them were nominated, and one of them won. That's very deserving because this is an incredibly well-acted movie. Cher is great. Nicolas Cage, this is as good or better than him in the role Leaving Las Vegas. He may actually be better in this movie. It's such a unique and interesting character that he creates here. He and Danny Aiello are brothers. Danny Aiello is going to marry Cher, but he has to go to Sicily to see his dying mother, and he asks her to approach his estranged brother, Nicolas Cage, to try to get him to come to the wedding. And he immediately falls for her, and she kind of tries to fight back against him, but again, she's also kind of attracted to him. And it's the way these characters talk. It's the way they interact with each other. It's all just really smart, and it's got a crispness to it too. The pace is just constantly moving as even as you have these very drawn out conversations and these big emotions going on. But it's an incredible film, and it's maybe the best thing in '87.
Yes, I'm regretting it immediately.
I've never seen it. I don't know. I've always just kind of not liked Cher. So, and maybe I've kind of just avoided everything she's been in. And it's not like on purpose, just kind of just always in the back of my mind, just like, eh.
But you liked her in Silkwood, didn't you?
That's true. Well, I don't know if I liked her in it as much as I liked the movie. And again, it's not like a Harrison Ford, Tom Hanks thing. It's just more of a, I don't know. He's always kind of just. It's like Oprah. Seeing Oprah in a movie, she just sticks out so much that it's. I don't know. It's just Cher.
Yeah, I've barely seen her as an actress, only in Mermaids, and then my music experience of Cher started with "If I Could Turn Back Time." So I came upon pop Cher
That
as
may be the
opposed
first
to
butt I've seen. I'm not sure. Either her or Goldie Hawn. Okay. Either way.
Fair. Speaking of butts and sexual things of all sorts of natures, Eddie Murphy Raw also turns 30 this week, and this is the comedy stand-up that I've seen more than any other thing except Bill Cosby himself, which I previously mentioned. Eddie Murphy Raw is incredibly powerful, charged, if you're a 13-year-old, and watching comedy with swear words in it for the first time. And if you're going to do that, this is the Deus Ex Machina of swear word comedy routines to come upon. And I learned so much from this routine. Maybe not the right things, but a lot of things, including... gosh, I'm not even going to say it, but you have to see Eddie Murphy Raw at some point.
At the age of 30.
I acknowledge that it is incredibly chauvinistic in parts and set in a time in 1987 that is not the same time. This does not fly today. But if you can put yourself in that moment and try and see it as comedy and not things that Eddie Murphy was actually doing or that Charlie Murphy was doing or whatever the case may be, just enjoy it for the laughs. If you can separate it from what it might be actually commenting on, it's magnificent.
Yeah, I can still do punchlines from this in my head constantly. This is the bit where he's talking about seeing Johnny Carson in the tabloid with half. Just going on. And it's horrible, but I'm just going, I'm gonna go find me a bush bitch. Just kills me every time.
What have you done for me lately?
Great.
And then when he imitates a woman's orgasm.
Oh God.
I do that from time to time. Not okay, let me rephrase. Not in bed. God damn it, I did it. I should have always say yeah. I did it. It's done. It's over with.
Just know you could have done that on purpose and had it been funny. Or any of us, for that matter.
Right. The bit on Rocky IV is a classic where he's talking about the way Italian guys come out of Rocky IV. So good.
Yeah.
So it's like a week of people at the peak of their powers, and then on top of that, my favorite film from '87, until I see other things perhaps, is Broadcast News. Director James L. Brooks stars Holly Hunter and William Hurt and Albert Brooks at the peak of his neuroses. This is a journalism film, so I'm already turned on by that. But then the chemistry between Holly Hunter and William Hurt and all of the things that go on in this particular movie, there's a pace to it that's so quick and so earnest as well. You're never thinking that they're making sort of a glamorous movie about broadcasting per se or news per se. It flows very earnestly, and I love almost every moment of this movie. It's my favorite James L. Brooks movie. It's my favorite Holly Hunter movie. William Hurt doesn't annoy me as much in this movie. Albert Brooks doesn't annoy me as much in this movie. So all in all, if you haven't seen Broadcast News, please do. I still think, despite the fact that it's set in a time when news was a way different thing, it still holds up.
Yeah, I love Broadcast News as well. I thought for some reason this week it didn't hold up quite as well as I thought. And mostly I think that has to do with James L. Brooks' direction. I think there's some things about his direction that's just a little flat. There isn't much to him as a director, especially when it comes to a visual setup. He doesn't really have that much visual invention. But the story also, he's got some very familiar story beats too. And that, good and bad in that. I think that's part of his television training is coming up with certain ways of, like, he's almost building toward a commercial break at times. There's just a certain, but other than that, though, I mean, the performances are so good that I don't really care about the problems so much. But I don't love it as much as I thought I did, especially coming off of seeing Moonstruck and what amazing movie Moonstruck was. I watched these back to back, and that one just very much overshadowed this one.
It makes you wonder if he actually is wondering, at some point this is going to be on TV. Maybe I should have this moment. I would not be surprised if that was a thought while they were making. I wouldn't be surprised either. Because I've seen that, especially in the 80s. It seemed like that happened a lot more than it does in the 90s and now.
But you also have to remember that era of 70s TV people from Mary Tyler
Right.
Moore, and that directorial tree was moving into films about that time, bringing that television training with them.
And knowing that they're going to be on TV
Yeah.
at some point. Because a lot of, they were filming alternative takes for TV too, for some movies. I don't know, anything else?
Believe it or not, that's it for 87. It's the biggest release week of the year for 87, and this one actually packs a punch. Other Christmas week or December release weeks, since we've been talking about 30-year films, have been somewhat disappointing at times, somewhat full. This, to me, is the most full of all of these weeks.
All right, before we get to next week, my iPad's run low on battery, so I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Our Key Grip, Charlie Messing. Our character actor, Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects designer or whatever, Corey Finneran.
May the Force be with you.
That's the only soundbite I had was special effects in the movie.
If you need me to do
we're good.
Okay.
Our associate producer, Jason from New Mexico.
This is crazy. You want me to hit you?
That's right.
What, like in the face?
Surprise me.
Our executive producer, Uncle Jeff.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
And our movie star, Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, ihatecritics.net/Patreon. And kind of like, basically the highest you donate, that'll be your credit. Maybe eventually we'll move it down. But, it's not, we're not here to embarrass anybody. We appreciate anything that's given to the podcast. And if you want a credit on the show, ihatecritics.net/Patreon is the best way to help support us. You're going to get bonus episodes, and apparently you can do a lot with that website. I've noticed Jason from New Mexico making comments on there today that I did, or I think he did it a while ago, but I'm seeing it for the first time today because I never go to Patreon. But I need to do a better job hanging out over there as well. But next week is Christmas. So there'll be a bonus podcast where we give each other Christmas presents, and you can listen to us unwrap them and that. And then a new movie comes out every day. We got Pitch Perfect 3 at one point, Jumanji, the P.T. Barnum movie.
Greatest Showman.
I don't care. I was trying to belittle it. Father Figures. Downsizing, and maybe other things too.
Just if I may, just before you go see The Greatest Showman, do listen to the Dollop episode on P.T. Barnum, so you know who this guy really was.
Yeah, so while he's treating all these quote-unquote freaks the way he does in the movies, wait, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
He didn't like them. He didn't treat them well. He didn't encourage them. He used them to make money. But yeah. So with that, our classic's going to be a Christmas movie, Love Actually. Is that accurate statement?
Yeah, Christmas movie is
Christmas-ish.
as well as it's set during Christmas time. For sure, but it's about time that we got to that movie on the show.
Because I've never seen it, but I've always heard it's kind of the movie where people watch it as a group and then forget, oh, why am I watching this with a group?
Right.
Don't watch it with your kids.
Right, that's the thing. It's one of those that's been on TBS TNT so many times, and then people forget that, oh, wait, this is not for kids. This is rated R.
And then with the sure to be hilarious Father Figures coming out, our top 5 is going to be Father Figures. Movie Father Figures. So that should be fun as well. Is there anything else I'm forgetting for next week?
Yeah, there's 3 1987 films, 2 pretty much not of note that we likely won't be able to find, but Good Morning Vietnam turns 30, which is kind of a big deal.
Fun. Most likely the podcast will come out after Christmas, so for what it's worth, if for all you really want it on Christmas Day, I apologize. We're just not going to record on Christmas Eve. All right, stick around for after the credits.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody can have. I mean, the three best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the three best friends.
All right, let's try to rank Brick real quick if that's okay. Brick, Terminator, Salvation.
Brick.
Terminator Salvation. I'm sorry.
I'll go Brick. If that's fine. Brick or Inception?
Inception.
Inception.
I haven't seen it, but I will go. Or I haven't seen it properly. Brick or Life of Brian?
Life of Brian.
Life of Brian.
I agree. Brick or American Gangster?
Brick.
Another Ridley Scott movie I haven't seen. I don't know.
I think I'm going to go Brick just because I thought American Gangster could have been better. Brick or Jumanji?
Brick.
Brick.
Brick or Goldeneye?
Brick.
Goldeneye. Barely.
Brick. Brick or Dodgeball?
Dodgeball.
Dodgeball.
I agree. I thought I was going to be alone on that one.
Love Dodgeball.
Brick or The Hunt for Red October?
Brick.
Hunt for Red October.
I'll go Brick, but I'm getting close. Brick or Dodgeball? I already did that.
If you can dodge a brick, you can dodge a ball.
Brick is ranked 222nd. All right, let's do a couple for fun. Love Actually or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Love Actually.
Love Actually.
I actually haven't seen Love Actually. So. Alice in Wonderland 1951 or Good Will Hunting?
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting.
About Minnie Driver and Matt Damon fighting on Twitter this week.
I didn't see that. What's that all about?
Matt Damon decided to address the sexual assault stuff and
stepped in it.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't really. I'm not going to say anything. Basically, just shut up. Just I don't even know what to say to that. It's kind of why we haven't talked about it on the podcast, really. Monty Python and the Holy Grail or Dawn of the Dead 2004?
Monty Python.
Monty Python.
Yep. Speed or Psycho?
Psycho.
The original Psycho.
Psycho.
I agree, even though I like Speed a lot. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, or Natural Born Killers?
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Agreed.
I really hate Natural Born Killers.
Me too.
I'd go Natural Born Killers, but I don't love it or anything. Gross Point Blank or Watchmen?
Gross Point Blank.
Gross Point Blank.
Watchmen.
Let's see. I voted against Watchmen. Let it be known.
I voted for Watchmen. Let it be known. Do not like that movie. Iron Man or The Phantom Menace?
Iron Man.
Iron Man.
Dead air. Are we done? We will find out. And
You remember the part in The Last Jedi where Jar Jar came back?
I thought for a second they might do something. That would have been amazing.
Yeah. He could have been in the background. I mean, he could have been part of the Resistance. Who knows?
Superman 1978 or Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events?
Superman.
Yes! Superman!
Agreed. Pinocchio 1940 or Goldfinger 1964?
Pinocchio.
Goldfinger.
This is one you made me watch, too, so I've actually seen
Yeah. Made you watch. Oh, let you experience.
Pinocchio. I remember that one better. Ocean's 11, 2001, Big Daddy.
Oh, Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Das Boot?
Ferris Bueller.
Das Boot.
A long movie. I'll go with Ferris Bueller. I mean, it was good, but it was just long. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or The Cable Guy?
Crouching Tiger.
Agreed. But the sequel, I would take The Cable Guy over.
Okay, we're done.
All right.